Yeah, because it changed. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Time is so 1 more minute. So please take your seats and we're going to get started. 1 minute, okay? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to see you all on this beautiful day in this beautiful space. Thank you all for being here for this very important event. My name is Raquel Quarles. I am a professor of community health and preventive medicine, also the associate director of our Prevention Research Center here at Morehouse School of Medicine. And it brings me great pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of our president and dean, Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, as well as our leadership team. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank BlackDoctor.org for partnering with us on this important event. And so with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Ashanti Carter to come up and get this important event started.
Hello, everyone. Oh, that was dry. Hello, everyone. Hello. So thank you so much, Dr. Quarles, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Dr. Ashanti Carter, and I serve as the Chief Academic Liaison to BlackDoctor.org, where culture and health connect. Woo, 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 woo. Let's give us a round of applause. So I do want to tell you that, once again, thank you again for joining us. We are going to journey through a powerful story, you guys. It's one that begins in history, moves into present day science, and looks ahead to the human impact and hope for the future. So you guys do know what we're talking about. It's tobacco, vaping, and its impacts on the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. So of course, we couldn't have done this without our sponsors, CTFK. Give them a round of applause. UL Research Institutes. Give them a round of applause. And of course, our gracious host, Morehouse School of Medicine. Give them a round of applause. All right, so with that being said, I want to open it up to our first panel. This is more of a fireside chat as we journey and look at the case of tobacco and menthol and cigarettes. So I would like to invite Dr. Gregory Bolden, who serves as the Community Initiatives Program Center for Black Health and Equity. Dr. Bolden, please come to the front. Take your seat to my right, and we're going to go ahead and get the conversation started. Are you ready? Yeah, give them some love, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. All
Only
right,
thing
am I
promise, I will
on?
not lie.
Yes. What happened?
The only thing I promise is I will not lie.
Oh no, you of course not. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. So, Dr. Bolden, introduce yourself to the people.
My name is Dr. Gregory Bolden. I'm the Community Initiatives Program Manager for the Center for Black Health and Equity, former staffer here at Morehouse School of Medicine many years ago, part of the National Black Leadership Initiative on Cancer, and one of the visiting professors on, believe it or not, nicotine addiction for the residents, first-year residents.
I love it.
So, yeah.
I love it.
We're happy.
Yes, we are happy. We are happy. So, housekeeping rules, put your phones on do not disturb, silence your phones because we are recording. So, can we give it up for Chosen Few Productions and Media? Yay! All right.
Now, hold on. Let me do mine too.
Okay. Because you said you're busy.
Yes.
You are very busy.
I won't hold that against you.
All right. So let's start, Dr. Bolden. I want to talk to you about the history of tobacco, right? The tobacco plant. How did it play a part with the enslavement of Africans? And just walk us through that, how it became a cash crop.
Well, let's take a step back.
Okay.
Because we all know that there were people here before Columbus arrived. Okay, so Columbus didn't make it here, but other folks did. There was an indigenous population here who used tobacco as a sacred plant. It was not commercialized, but it was a spiritual thing. When the colonizers arrived, John Rolfe, and they discovered tobacco had a different property here in the Americas than they did in England. When they sent it back, they found out that it was a much higher quality property than it was there in England. What happened was they attempted to have indentured servants, white folks, cultivate the property, the plant. They tried with the indigenous population. They tried to enslave them. They couldn't. That's like going into somebody's house and you want to take over their house. They know their way around the house. They couldn't keep them on. So what happened was they went into Africa where there was already a group of individuals, group of people who were cultivating and who were planting, who were experts in utilizing the soil and planting crops in Africa. They were brought over, and initially it was not indentured servitude that perpetuated throughout, each family, but they were brought over. At some point, they could have been released.
Right.
They didn't. They could have been. So for the white indentured servants, they were given property, they were given land, they were given resources to start their lives. When the Africans came over, they found a group of individuals that could work the land, that would not break down, that could actually give them what they wanted, free labor.
Right.
Yeah. So what happened was see, y'all see what's happening today, and it's not anything new. So around the 1680s, 1670s, there was this thing called Bacon's Rebellion,
Mhm.
where black folks, white folks, poor white folks raised up against those who were in power. Those were the rich folks that were actually owners of the land. They raised up and they came out and told the white folks, oh, by the way, that's when white folks became white folks, by the way. Before that, it wasn't white folks. You were Irish, you were European, you were French, you weren't white. Blacks, there weren't blacks. There was Yoruba, there were Nigerians, there were other folks. It was nationalized. After that rebellion, the folks who were empowered split us. It was black folks, white folks, and the idea that if you're white, even though you're poor, you're dirt poor, you're better than that black person over there.
Wait. So let me stop you right there. So that's when, so at Bacon's Rebellion, what he's saying is that's when we had race that was used as a social construct.
Yes. And the reason why is because those poor white folks and those poor black folks got together and they rebelled together. So, and you're seeing that now. So if we were able to get together now, that's a separate story. But that's when we saw the division. And that's when you saw black and white introduced into the dictionaries, so to speak. So that's what happened. So what happened was even beyond throughout slavery, and though Africans were actually picking the cotton, producing it, they were the ones who were working the process. And even after the Emancipation Proclamation, they were still doing it. There's a reason why we celebrate Juneteenth. So they were freed, but they couldn't go anywhere, but they could still work on those farms. They were set free. And the tobacco industry saw a ready-made workforce.
The tobacco industry.
Yes.
So, all right, Dr. Bolden, continue to teach us. So now we have the tobacco plant. It's a cash crop. It's
the first cash crop of the Americas.
The first, right? The first cash crop in the United States of America, the tobacco plant. So now let's fast forward. Now we have cigarettes, menthol cigarettes. How did that transform into this plant to now a menthol cigarette for us?
Well, you know, they did dip, they did chew, they roll your own. But then there was this thing when we're moving toward menthol. This young man, Lord Spud Hughes, an asthmatic, by the way, who was taking menthol. He wasn't supposed to be smoking, but what he did was he hid his cigarettes in his menthol tin. In the morning when he woke up, he would smoke his cigarette and he would find it refreshing. What happened? The menthol in his menthol tin permeated the tobacco. And so you have the first tobacco product. He went out and he actually developed his own cigarette, Spuds, non-filters, but people would complain about it. And later on, the tobacco industry, he got a patent on it, by the way, very smart on his part. The tobacco industry actually bought his patent. This is back in the 1920s, y'all.
The Roaring 20s.
The Roaring 20s, yes, for $90,000. $90,000. You know what Lord Spud Hughes did with that? Went on a shopping spree. You know, he was kind of black. But he went on a shopping spree. But that enabled the tobacco industry to have a new product that they could sell on the market. And guess what? It wasn't marketed to us as black folks. Sorry, it wasn't.
Who was it marketed to?
It was marketed to primarily white women.
Why is that?
Because they found that smoking was harsh. It was harsh. And even the white men who, when they smoked the menthol, they found that it had too much menthol in it and it didn't give them the same tobacco properties that they had in their pipes and in their cigars. So they were actually not wanting to smoke the menthol cigarettes. So they targeted initially to the white women in America. But then in the late 1940s, early 1950s, they saw a niche market that was not being tapped into. Now you have to understand the tobacco industry was the first major industry that gave Black folks jobs, not just in the field, but in management.
Really?
Yes. So when we were fighting for civil rights and stuff in the 50s, the tobacco industry was already ahead of us, ahead of the curve. They were giving Black folks management positions and they were paying them well at this time. Why? Because they saw a niche market. They saw a market that was not being tapped into. How many of y'all remember Cadillac? You know about Cadillac? Who saved Cadillac?
Black people?
Black people. Cadillac was about to go under, but they found that Black folks had cash money and they were actually paying white folks to go out and buy the Cadillacs for them, and they would pay them extra to actually get the car. Cadillac recognized that. They opened up their market to Black folks who had cash. The tobacco industry saw that the Black folks, middle class and up, had cash. So what did they do? They used our athletes, they used our politicians, they used our elected officials, they used our gatekeepers in our communities to market their products. So it started out with cool. We all cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
Right.
yeah, used a penguin initially, but they got rid of the penguin as their mascot. But we became cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the 1950s, they introduced Salem. And in 1963, they introduced Newport.
Yeah,
Now,
Newport.
can I fast forward for just one moment?
Yeah.
37% of the market shares in tobacco are menthol products. About 37%. They make about $88 billion in menthol sales each year. Introduced in 1963, Newport. Newport now has the #2 market shares right behind Marlboro.
Wow.
Marlboro. Who smokes Newports? Black people, Latinos, women, the LGBTQ community, and that makes up the majority of the sales for menthol. Now, for African Americans, those who smoke, about 85 to 90% of those who smoke mentholated products.
So, okay. There are some people, and I sometimes look at commercials and all of that just to look at the strategies. What strategies did they use to target the Black community to get us to buy menthol cigarettes?
I am so glad you asked that. They were smart.
Okay.
They were rich.
Mm-hmm.
They were in our communities. So they rolled up in vans and gave their product away. You know why? Because we know now that if you can get a person to smoke 100 cigarettes, you can get them addicted to that product, and you can keep them addicted unless something actually intervenes to actually break that addiction. And there's a number of things that you can do. But they gave the product away. They invested in our communities. Anybody heard of Cool Jazz Festival?
Yes.
Anybody heard of Alvin Ailey Dance Troupe? Yeah. How about the NAACP, who just recently stopped taking money from the tobacco industry? How about the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship? How about the Urban League? How about our churches? Do you know that when I worked in California, I worked for the California Black Health Network, and they were giving away money. You could write them a letter and they would send you $10,000 just because. And then, but they would come back to you and say, well, we gave you $10,000. We need you to support yada, 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 whatever it is that they're supporting. They came on the college campuses. They went into our communities. They supported all the different things in our communities that we just needed a little bit of money for. So they could pretty much buy you for $500. So that's how they permeated our community. And some way, somehow, along the way, because so many African Americans were smoking mentholated cigarettes, it became a black cigarette.
That part.
Yes.
That part. With it becoming a black cigarette.
Mhm.
Can you just, you talked about them coming into our communities, right?
Mhm.
But when we look at the advertisers, right? You see the person smoking the cigarette, it looks cool, it looks
Mhm.
sexy, all
Mhm.
of that. But I mean, just talk to us about those messages.
See, we used to see them with the cigarettes in their hands and being out having fun, at the party, yada, yada. But recently, have you noticed there's no cigarettes
Mm-mm.
in those ads?
Right.
If I say alive with pleasure, what's the thing that pops in your head? Come on, talk to me. Alcohol, alive with pleasure. How many of y'all old enough to have a Jet magazine sitting on the coffee table? How about an Ebony? How about an Essence? If you open it up, you can open it up to the back page, center page, they had, and y'all remember Newport's was alive with pleasure?
Oh, wow.
How about, let's see, what was it, Virginia Slims?
Ooh.
Menthol.
Oh,
You
yeah,
come a long way,
baby.
baby.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
How about, let's see, Salem's. Salem was the first filtered menthol cigarettes, by the way. And it was refreshing.
Mm.
You're breathing in freshness. 9 out of 10 doctors recommend Chesterfield. And they were recommending smoking for asthma. Now, we know better now. But the doctor said, if I have asthma, I need to smoke a cigarette, right? Help relieve my asthma. How do they come in? We let them in.
We let them in.
We let them in, yeah.
So then talk to me about this. Why is nicotine so addictive?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Oh my God. Do you know that is the only product that's a stimulant as well as a depressant? You get up in the morning, you grab your cigarette, you take your first puff, and what opens up? All your veins and all. It's like a little high, right? In the morning. How many of y'all know smokers? Come on, y'all know. How many of y'all know smokers that get up first thing in the morning before they reach for their glasses or whatever is on their coffee, they reach for their cigarettes? Can't be 30 seconds, but then they get that little high. But what happens if they don't have it?
A little grouchy.
Grouchy. Vasoconstriction. It's a lack of oxygen that's going to your brain, the frontal cortex. And we actually know because I worked with Dr. Victor DeNoble, the first true scientist that was ever fired by the tobacco industry, because he was hired to actually develop a safer cigarettes. Why? Because the tobacco industry wanted to reduce cardiovascular disease and people. He actually developed a safer cigarettes, but he was fired because he actually started doing research on the brain. And they wanted him to stop, and he wouldn't stop. So he developed a safer cigarettes because he discovered that you could take all the nicotine out of the cigarette, but there were still addictive properties within that cigarette that would still keep folks addicted. They wouldn't smoke as many cigarettes, but they were still addicted. Okay, so just remember that name, Dr. Victor DeNoble. And, you know, when we see what happens with the brain, and one of the other things that he actually discovered is the area that affects mostly in the brain is the hypothalamus.
Okay.
And there was one other property, one other chemical that actually affected that same area of the brain. And he discovered it was cocaine. So, addictive
So
property.
nicotine and cocaine,
Yes.
it impacts the same
Mhm.
parts of the brain.
Same
with
parts of the
so with the hypothalamus, walk me through what is that for? What's our hypothalamus for?
It's the area of the brain. Well,
I know you have to dig in there.
mhm.
That's what I remember.
Oh yeah, it's right in the middle of the brain.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you have to, and it actually promotes helps promote the dopamine within your brain, which actually adds to your pleasure receptors.
Mm,
So,
pleasure.
yes. So Newport was right. Alive with pleasure.
That
But
part.
yeah, so it affects the brain, but it physically changes your brain so that when the nicotine comes into your brain, there are dopamine receptors, and the nicotine mimics the dopamine receptors in your brain, but it's sitting there. And when when you wake up in the morning and normally you say, I feel good, the
Yeah.
happy receptors. It's like, well, what happens is nicotine mimics that, but instead of saying, hey, I feel good, it screams at you, I feel good. And I was going to do it here, but I got
No,
this
do it.
microphone
No, do
and
it.
no,
1,
no.
2, 3. I feel good.
And it's screaming at you, but it looks like dopamine. Those receptors, and they just receive it. But just like that high comes up, you have that crash that comes down. And that's why you see people who are trying to quit smoking actually get really grouchy, and they get, irritable, and you can't stand to be around them. But I just pray that you stay with them, because it's not their fault.
Right.
It's a chemical reaction within their brain. And what we need to learn is around what we need to do around with cessation. How do we move ourselves through the cessation process?
That part. And that was my next question. What can we say to the government? Like, just to take away or loosen the grip that tobacco has on the Black community?
What can we say?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Why?
Who's the chief of staff in the White House right now?
That part.
Susie Wiles,
Mm-hmm.
a tobacco lobbyist for vaping. Oh, we need to talk about vaping too.
Oh, that's next.
Who's a tobacco lobbyist?
Okay.
The lobbyists who paid the administration to help them win the White House,
Okay.
who control that. You notice that when they first went in, what happened? The FDA lost its office.
Okay.
The Office of Smoking and Health went away. The NIH
Yes.
lost funding. Researchers lost funding.
Yes.
And the lawsuit that we had against the FDA and the tobacco industry went away.
Wow.
You think there's influence? Listen to him sometime. He'll tell you, well, Susie told me to do this, and Susie told me to do that, and I did it,
So then what's the solution? Can we just take our power back? What can we do?
Yes, we can, but it has to be from the local level up.
Okay.
Has to be grassroots. Our politicians, a lot of our leaders are bought. Let me give you a short story, very short story. Reverend Sheffield, he's a pastor in Detroit, Michigan. He works with us with the Detroit, Wayne, Oakland Tobacco-Free Coalition. He lost his mother to tobacco-related diseases. The tobacco company came to him and offered him $25,000 if he would just sit on the side and not fight against them? He said no. So they came back. We'll give you $50,000. He said no. It got all the way up to $250,000 that the tobacco industry was offering him if he would just sit on the side and not fight against them and what they were doing in Detroit. He turned it down because he had lost his mother. That's at the local level. There are a lot of our leaders. Can I call names?
No.
Y'all know some of them. Reverend Al. But I'm not, I'm not saying, if you offer me $3 million, I might take it too. But anyway, I'm sorry, y'all. We've been compromised. So what we have to do is we have to do it at the local level. We have to organize because they are very organized. We have some of our partners here today with the Heart Coalition, who's right here in Atlanta. We work very closely with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. We're the Center for Black Health and Equity. We're a national nonprofit organization that does capacity building. We have to do it from a local level, at the local community, but before we get to the policies, we've got to be organized. Right. If we see our communities organized, it don't matter how many cigarettes those tobacco industry makes, as long as they're sitting over there in the corner, not doing anything, not burning, not in anyone's lungs, folks are not being affected by secondhand smoke or thirdhand smokes. So what? We're organized. We've got to take back the power at the local level.
I love it. I love it. So in your career, Dr. Bolden, have you seen a positive or a negative impact, like in the shift with tobacco in the Black community?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. When we educate our community, we've seen the tobacco usage rate go down tremendously.
Wow.
Cigarettes. But now we're seeing vaping. And we always want to look prosperous and by smoking that big old cigar.
Yes.
Oh, I love my cigar. Without the true understanding that not only are you killing yourself, because people will tell me all the time, well, I don't inhale. Well, you exhale and everybody else around you is inhaling.
Right.
So, and with vaping, we see that younger people are doing it. I mean, elementary school students are doing it.
Right.
And they are actually, teachers are collecting the little pods in the schools by the big yellow envelope, manila envelope size. And at the end of the day, oftentimes it's full. They sit in the back and the front and they're vaping and they're ruining their lungs.
Right.
They're going to have serious problems with their lungs.
Right.
We call it popcorn lungs, In Flint, Michigan, we had a young man who was 16 years old who had been vaping and had to have a lung transplant. 16.
And we're going to hear more about that in panel number 2. So this has been a wonderful conversation. I just want to give you the opportunity to give some last remarks before we open it up to some Q&A.
Okay. So we're not lost. There is a way out. There's always a way out, but we have to do it together. For those, we tell folks all the time, we're not against the smoker. That is not our enemy.
Say it one more time.
Smokers are not our enemy. Our fight is with the tobacco industry, who has targeted us, who continues to target us, who continues to infiltrate our community, who continues to buy out our elected officials, our community leaders, and who keep putting out messages that are shared among us, through us, that are just straight out lies. We are not engaged in this so that there's more police action in the Black community. or interactions within the Black community, because we need to talk about that too. But this is not what it's about. It's about it's a social justice issue. It's a health issue. It's a public health issue. And Lord knows that if we don't do something about this right now, and just think about this. In 2009, when President Obama signed the Family Tobacco Safe, I forget the exact name of it, but menthol was left in there deliberately. And some of our partners signed on to that. We did not, because we saw that as being racist. We saw that as being, like I said, a social justice issue. But if he had eliminated menthol, about 500,000 young people who are smoking today would not be smoking.
Wow.
The number of lives that we could have saved would have been around 250,000 folks. The folks who would have quit is somewhere in the neighborhood, we're predicting somewhere in the neighborhood of 650,000 folks who have quit. And we saw this in Canada when they eliminated menthol, outlawed menthol, but other areas. So it's a economic issue, social justice issue. It's a public health issue. And the only reason that it's still on the market today is because of money.
Money. All right. I'm going to open it up to some audience questions. Who has a question for Dr. Bolden? And don't be shy. Okay. Hold on. Let Mr. Few give you the mic.
It's Jalissa with the Heart Coalition, and I work closely with Dr. Bolden. So I just wanted to kind of address the question to the audience itself. Since we're here at Morehouse School of Medicine and you all are receiving the information, how can we continue to partner with you all so we can deeply go into the community that's being impacted, so they are hearing what we're hearing and able to provide more resources? So it's more of an open discussion, because we want to continue to provide the resources, let those that are being impacted to be able to be the voices, and then we can amplify and organize a little bit more, right? Personal testimonials, our youth, that are vaping, 10 years old, we're seeing with the courts. I mean, the initiation is real early. I think in Cobb, they want to put more metal detectors in the schools now. And while that's good, we also need to go deeper with more prevention methods and education. So we work in what's considered marginalized community. I love the work that I do, and I'm always wanting to be able to speak out in those that are not in the space to be heard or seen. So it's more of an open discussion.
I love it. So you're asking, how can your organization work with Morehouse?
Yeah, or collectively, like collaborate. Like, how can we branch off together where we're organizing, where we're educating our community, where Morehouse School of Medicine can also be a part of the initiative as well too. I mean, I know it takes a while to be able to organize, but how can we at least take some of the first steps?
We're doing that right now.
Yeah.
With this event. We're live streaming. It's going to hit probably like thousands of people. Morehouse School of Medicine is in the house. You have Dr. Young Mercado, Dr. Quarles, who's here, and you have so many people who are seeing this. So starts with a conversation. And then after, of course, we converse. I'm a woman of action.
Yeah.
So after that, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's have some action. And that's where it starts.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a question behind you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Quick question. So, as you mentioned before, right? Like, it used to be politicians and the pastor, and those were the only people who had power. In this day and age, we have influencers, we have, social media. And I was just wondering, what commitments would you like to see through TikTok, YouTube, all social media outlets to ensure that there are borders or boundaries or standards placed on vaping?
One thing that I would like to see them do is to get with folks like the Heart Coalition. First, get the correct information, and then go out and publish it. It's amazing how many folks are on TikTok, and y'all still on Facebook? Just us,
Sometimes.
just me old people. But all the social media platforms. But first, get the correct information, because what we're hearing now is, you know what? If we get rid of menthol, but the police are going to come out and they're going to be stopping folks on the street. We're not outlawing menthol at the local level. If you want to get your menthol cigarettes, okay. What we're, like I keep saying, we're against the tobacco industry. We want them to stop targeting us as a people. But in order for you to be organized, you have to get the correct information and then put it out there any way that you want. You know, one of the things that we do each year, we do things called No Menthol Sunday, where we provide information, we do a toolkit, we do fans. You can get a fan over here at the table. But we actually have the third Sunday in May as the day where we celebrate No Menthol Sunday. But we're turning it into a brand because we want folks to do the No Menthol Sunday activities throughout the year to just keep it in front of folks. We had a No Menthol Sunday activity. Some of y'all were at the National Conference on Tobacco or Health earlier this month. And someone in Detroit did a No Menthol Sunday, but on a Tuesday. Yeah. And they did a stepping class. And then they had a party. We did poetry slams. We've done No Menthol Sundays. I mean, because we want to educate folks. So how do we keep influencers? Just come out and be a part of these activities, get the correct information, share it with your family, your friends, loved ones, at church, scream, you know, be a Jimmy Kimmel. Tell the truth.
That's all the time, right?
That's all the time.
That's all the time.
Yes.
All right, everyone, give Dr. Bolden a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. All right.
I'm black. You gotta hug me.
Of course. Me too. Me too. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring up our panelists for panel number 2, but first let me go ahead and introduce it. And just forgive me, you guys, for reading from my phone. So Dr. Bolden, he talked a lot about, you know, cigarettes, and then he alluded to vaping and hookah, all of those things. So that's what we're going to talk about for panel number 2. But we're going to get really deep into what the science says about tobacco, e-cigs, right? Hookah, because I heard, is it true you guys in Atlanta, you like the hookah? You like the hookah? All right, all right. So we're going to talk about that. So Dr. Quarles, can you join me? Dr. Wright, and of course, Dr. Sheila Young Mercado. Come on up.
Good morning again, everyone. Let us first start by having our panelists introduce themselves. So,
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Krista Wright. I'm a research director at Chemical Insights Research Institute of UL Research Institutes located in Marietta, Georgia. I lead the Center for Toxicology and Human Health, where we study consumer product safety as well as other electronic nicotine delivery systems and e-cigarettes that we're going to discuss today. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and thank you for your attention.
Awesome. That's amazing. I want to come visit you.
Come on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Sheila Young Mercado. Currently at Morehouse School of Medicine, I'm serving as an assistant professor, and I'm the director of the Student Success Coach or Student Success Program for the Physician Assistant Program. I'm also a mentor and an advisor for our medical students, and also on the admissions committee for the medical school. And apart from Morehouse, I'm also the president of the Association of Black Women Physicians. We are an organization that is 42 years old. I was actually a student in the organization at UCLA and Drew. And I'm just so happy to be here with you today. And this is such an important conversation. I will say that my father died when I was 19 from lung cancer due to smoking and also being in the Navy, being in the ships. So that was a really hard time. I also remember when I was 5 years old or 4 years old, going to the liquor store or the gas station to buy his menthols. If everyone can remind me, please, I'm trying to remember it. They were the brown ones. Is it Moore's? More? Not Marlboro, but there was like a specific one that Black men used to smoke. I used to pick up the Newports, the Cools, like all of those. And so, not Camel, yeah, I'll find it later on. But the thing is that this is so intricately connected to my life and to what we need to do to educate our young people. So it's tobacco, it is, the hookah. It's also looking at some of the legalized cannabinoids that are now available for folks. And the inhaled versions also cause damage. And so again, this is important. This is important for our youth to understand. And so again, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you both for being here. I think it's probably good to start with definitions.
Yes.
What are e-cigarettes? What does it mean to vape?
That's a really great question. Well, from a scientific standpoint, e-cigarettes are known as electronic nicotine delivery systems. They are electronic devices that aerosolize what are known as e-liquids, which contain propylene glycol, glycerol, as well as nicotine and other flavoring agents that are aerosolized and then inhaled by the user. Now, the problem with this is that as the device ages, it also releases chemicals as well as hazardous metals, heavy metals, lead, chromium, cadmium, into the lungs or into the aerosols that are then inhaled. And we also have noted that there's different device formats. They have evolved over time. The initial e-cigarettes looked like cigarettes, but now they look like transformers, if you will. They look like huge devices that generate a large amount of smoke or vapor that the user then inhales. But then there are also some trickier devices that look like Game Boy systems. And so this is another problem that the tobacco industry is targeting our children with cigarettes or e-cigarettes that look like gaming devices. Then we also have hoodies that are also e-cigarettes or electronic nicotine delivery systems that help young users disguise their vaping while they're in classrooms. So they can attach their vapes, to their hoodies and then blow the emissions into their hoodies in the classrooms. Also, I recently learned at the NCTOH conference not too long ago that Dr. Bolden mentioned that a recent study in Virginia confiscated a number of different e-cigarettes from different high schools and middle schools and elementary schools. And do know that these confiscated e-cigarettes contained not only nicotine, but methamphetamine and fentanyl. And guess where the fentanyl was found? In the elementary schools. This is highly concerning because now we're not just dealing with nicotine. We're dealing with illicit drugs within these different devices that have evolved over time that are now targeting our youth, but also targeting our adults as well. And so I'll stop there, but that's the issue with e-cigarettes currently. And it's growing by the day.
Now, weren't they advertised as being healthier than regular cigarettes? So talk to me about how is this now a problem? Because before it was, this is a better way, or maybe on the way to cessation, smoking cessation, as you go to e-cigarettes and then you move on to being able to totally stop your smoking addiction.
That was the plan initially. However, that has been debunked. E-cigarettes are not smoking cessation tools. They've never been, and I don't believe they ever will. There has been some evidence in the literature that in certain populations they are effective in the UK, and actually they love e-cigarettes in the UK. However, most people in the UK and Australia have to have a prescription to get e-cigarettes. And so here in the United States, you can go into your local 7-Eleven and be 7 or 11 and purchase an e-cigarette. So hence we have this huge market that's been unregulated for too long. Just the history really, in 2007, a chemist named Han Lick developed the e-cigarette for his father to help him quit smoking. And then he commercialized it, patented it, and then it introduced into the market and here in the United States within 2007, 2009. But they came into the United States unregulated. And then manufacturers took hold. And then we have Pandora's box. And now we have a huge epidemic on our hand where we have adolescent vaping. We have folks who are dual using. And I'm gonna stop there and let Dr. Mercado step in, chime in, go ahead.
Well, you know, I can understand the theory behind trying to make it a device, a delivery system for stopping smoking. We currently use patches, gum, right? So it seems like it would be an effective way because they would get sort of that sensation. However, what you're saying is that original design has been corrupted, as many other things. I do just want to let folks know that there are ways to stop smoking and that folks have stopped. You know, we can prescribe first, 14 milligram patch for a couple weeks, then a 7 milligram patch for a couple weeks. And if you stick with that, people have stopped. I'm actually saying that because that's what we did for my mom after she had a stroke when I was in medical school. I was like, this is the perfect time. Here we go. And so she did stop. Unfortunately, she restarted. But it is possible. And so the other thing with e-cigarettes is that they smell so good. Right? It just freshens the air. Like you think that it smells good. You think that you are breathing something that's a nice air freshener. And, it makes it seem like it's less harmful, and I do remember when they initially came out and everyone was saying, oh, this is just water vapor. This is just water. It's just giving me the feeling. It's just giving me a little bit of the mint and the flavor of it. But we know that that's not true.
Yes, that misconception was propagated early on about water vapor, but we know that is utterly false now. Research that we've conducted at Chemical Insights has given us really great knowledge about the contents of e-cigarette emissions, and they are ripe with aerosols. Now, what is an aerosol? An aerosol is a mixture of solid and liquid particles traveling within a gas. And this gas can be air, but this particular gas from e-cigarette emissions contains not only volatile organic compounds that are known carcinogens, but also these are laden with particulate matter of various size ranges that can corrupt your lungs and minimize your lung function, but also jeopardize you for bacterial infections and viral infections. Remember COVID? You're like, COVID. Well, folks who vaped during COVID had higher levels of mortality, but also nicotine addiction played a major role in COVID susceptibility. And so we're seeing that the likelihood of infection due to vaping is higher in comparison to those who don't vape. So that misconception about water vapor is utterly false. We do know that it's laden with high levels of volatile organic compounds, heavy metals, as well as particulate matter. But a recent study from UC Davis indicated that not only do disposable e-cigarettes have higher levels of particulate matter than tobacco cigarettes, but they also have higher levels of volatile organic compounds as well as heavy metals. Therefore, the notion that e-cigarettes are safer than tobacco cigarettes has been recently debunked.
Thank you. And you know what? That was amazing. And I love the way that you described that. I'm just going to break this down a little bit into some plain language that those online can really understand. So it causes cancer. Okay? These small molecules will go and cut up your lungs and make your lungs not work anymore and make you more prone to death. So that's what she's essentially saying with all of those. Think of those little particulate matters and those aerosols, all of those compounds. They do direct injury to the lung. They kill the cells. They kill the cells of the lungs. Okay, and then after that happens, you know, let's think of something. Let's think of something that, let's say you have like an orange, right? You know, all those little pieces of orange. What happens when you just leave it out in the sun, right? It starts to dry, and then is it hard? You know, it becomes hard. Well, that's what happens to the lungs. And then you have to have a lung transplant. And so this is really serious, and especially for young people. You know, there's a term that we used to use a term called TRALI. It's trauma-induced, you know, lung injury, but now there's one, EVALI.
EVALI.
Yeah.
Yes. ENS and vaping-associated lung injury, which was originally associated with one component within e-liquids called vitamin E acetate.
Oh.
Now, the thing about vitamin E acetate is at room temperature, it's a solid.
Mhm.
But when you aerosolize it in the process of vaping, it becomes an aerosol or a vapor. But when it gets in your lungs, it becomes a solid again. So therefore, you are basically suffocating due to exposure to this vitamin E acetate that's in certain e-liquids and in certain e-cigarettes. But we also have evidence that EVALI can happen without vitamin E acetate. And so therefore, it's the harmful mixture within the ENS emissions that can lead to this lung dysfunction and this cellular damage, this airway dysfunction that we know is associated with EVALI.
So with EVALI, and now we're hearing this is becoming a problem in youth, the pattern of access and availability of these products in youth is changing. Talk to us about vaping in youth.
Well, recent statistics from the CDC indicate that from 2023 to 2024, that there is a decline in vaping. But still, 1.8 million students are still vaping. And 40% of those 1.8 million students are addicted. Now, as Dr. Bolden mentioned, nicotine is also a depressant, but also a stimulant. But just imagine the teenage mind is still developing. The psychological and pathological and physiological processes are still developing. And therefore, it makes them more prone to be nicotine addicted and also obtain or adhere to poor lifestyle choices, mood swings, outbursts, but also impulse control is lost doing this, right? And so therefore if you're a teenager and you're vaping, you are jeopardizing your future. But here's the most important point that I'd like to make. Recent studies, these are animal-based, I'll say, have indicated that vaping can also induce transgenerational effects. That means that your children's children can be impacted by vaping. Yes. So we need to be cognizant of our lifestyle choices, our habits, and do know that vaping can alter those if you're a teen and make you make poor decisions, but also have social anxiety, and as Dr. Bolden mentioned earlier, depression. And so that's an issue that I'd like to address or have Dr. Mercado address as well.
Yes, you know, I really wanted to get down to this, the root of this. You know, sometimes we just look at the problem. You know, someone has diabetes, someone has high blood pressure. That's the result of something underneath, right? So can we talk a little bit about why do young people begin vaping? Now, we know the pressures of, you know, try this marijuana, try a cigarette, but what is it behind these e-cigarettes that makes it more palatable for young people to try?
I would say that there's a predatory marketing sort of element to this too, because imagine if you're a kid walking down the street and you're walking by a store and you see all these glittery posters that have cool people, but then you're also online, you see these cool people using these same products on these glittery posters. I mean, it's just really social media marketing is also predatory to our kids, but the adoption of this is also a peer pressure element. They're feeling that they want to be cool, they want to belong. And I do believe this coolness element is a factor in them adopting e-cigarettes, but also the ease of accessibility. As I mentioned earlier, there's several different stores around the country, around the block. If I go around my block, I think there's like 10 CBD and vaping shops around my neighborhood. And I recently heard a study in which it happened in Raleigh, and there was a high school that was concerned and was trying to lobby with their local local authorities because in a 2-mile radius around this high school, and I was shocked to hear this, 86 vaping shops in a 2-mile radius. 86. I had to ask them, I said, 86 or 16? They said 86. So 86 locations around this 2-mile radius around this high school that kids could get easy accessibility to these e-cigarettes or harmful nicotine-laden devices. So I think it's a peer pressure element, but the accessibility, but also marketing. They're targeting our teenagers and our adolescents.
And what about the flavors?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna say, don't get me started on the flavors, but let's go. Imagine as a teenager, you walk by a product, a poster, and you see, we got Skittles flavors. And Skittles are your favorite candy.
They're mine.
They have Snickerdoodle. They have all types of dessert candy flavors. And they also have, what I've learned recently, is what they call experiential marketing of these flavors. So as Dr. Bolden mentioned earlier, the Cool Fest has now translated to the Geek Bar Fest, in which they have these flavors that are being, marketed, but also these new devices around the country, and they're partnering with music festivals now to help amplify these different flavor profiles that they're selling and different e-cigarette devices. So the flavors are another marketing tool and another way to target our youngsters and get them adopted and addicted early to get them in the pipeline to what? The next level up. Because I do believe vaping and nicotine addiction is a gateway substance to tobacco use or cigarette use. But there's also evidence that it can lead to marijuana use as well.
Now, there are some, there was a recent study that talked about restricting flavors. Do you two, can you talk about that, or one of you talk about that? Restricting the flavors?
Yes, so there's a number of lobby groups. And I believe her name is Carolina Gonzalez. Do you know? Okay, but they're one of the groups that really works to help remove the marketing towards children and through active legislation. And several states have been able to remove flavoring from e-cigarettes.
And has there been any success in that? Have they seen success as a result of restricting those flavors?
They did. There was some success in reducing, but they found that the students or the young people then went to cigarettes instead. So, but one of the questions that we should ask is there really a difference between e-cigarettes and cigarettes?
Great question. And I would argue there is a major difference. I do believe they're not comparable. They're apples and oranges, honestly, because a number of the e-liquid ingredients that we know of are considered generally regarded as safe for ingestion, to eat, not to inhale. And a large amount of these e-liquid flavors have never been tested with regards to their safety or their inhalability or the detriments to the lung.
Right.
And so, in my opinion, there is a difference between vaping and smoking, but the outcomes of vaping are still being unraveled, untangled, and determined but we'll have to understand those a little bit further down the line because of the latency period of disease,
Right.
of cancer. There's usually a 10 to 20 year window. But in my opinion, I hope I'm wrong. My name is Dr. Wright, but I'm wrong sometimes. But I do believe we'll see a huge influx of new diseases that we don't even know or understand. And we need to get ahead of this now. And I think education is the key. Awareness is the key. And the grassroots, boots on the ground approach is what's needed right now to target these populations and engage them and ensure that they are aware of the risks associated with vaping.
Are there studies that are showing a higher nicotine addiction with vaping versus cigarettes? Is that what you're pointing to or alluding to?
Do you want to take this or do you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things we didn't talk about is the tobacco industry trying to move to different nicotine formulations. They're called nicotine analogs. And they have moved into another nicotine formulation called 6-methyl-nicotine. And this nicotine has been studied since the 1970s, but it is 6 times more addictive and 3 times more toxic. But the tobacco industry wants to start including this into e-cigarettes. But guess what? A recent study found that they're already including it without the FDA's knowledge. And I believe that's on purpose, to start trickling in this 6-methyl-nicotine, to start getting people even more addicted and keep them in the cycle, the chain of tobacco that I believe is really at play right now. But I do believe that there are several studies that have shown that vaping can lead to higher levels of nicotine. And importantly, with adolescents, because their brain is still developing, that means that addiction potential is higher to nicotine than in adults, because those neurological pathways, physiological processes, psychological processes are still developing. Therefore, the nicotine dependency might be greater in adolescents. Therefore, it may be harder to quit.
You know, I want to bring something up about nicotine in particular. You know, it stimulates our sympathetic nervous system because it's a sympathomimetic. That means it mimics norepinephrine, epinephrine, which are adrenaline and noradrenaline. So what happens when our body releases adrenaline? Our eyes widen, right? Our heart starts to beat faster. You know, we start to sweat a little bit. And we have to think about the fact that when they're using these, they're keeping themselves in a constant state of high sympathetic activity. Now, when I think about that, I also think about ACEs. How many of you guys know about ACEs? Adverse childhood experiences, right? And so there's a correlation there. And it's the basics. Like, that's the thing I love about science. It's like, if you understand the basics, you can see all of the different ways that different outcomes that can occur. So very similar to ACEs. So think about that, guys. When the kids have a high ACE score, what are they more prone to? Heart disease, lung disease, cancer. So in effect, if they don't have those adverse childhood experiences, it's almost like they're adding them by using e-cigarettes.
Agreed.
Wow. Well, I want to shift us a bit. We're running out of time, but I don't want us to leave the conversation without talking about hookah. That's become very popular.
I'm a little guilty of that too. Around the corner from UCLA, right across from the Fox Theater, that's where a lot of the movie premieres happen. Yeah, we would go and have, you know, Mediterranean food, do the hookah, and we just kept asking ourselves, well, is this safe? Is this going to harm our lungs? You know, we were medical students at the time, and the flavors were okay. I didn't feel any difference or anything, and I decided, okay, we just don't have to do that. but it's like a social and a cultural method of just spending time together. It helps with that. You know, you're doing something that's cool together. And I think that, you know, we have to find ways to replace that activity with something else that might be more healthy. So hookah in and of itself is more carcinogenic. It causes more problems than both e-cigarettes and regular cigarettes.
So why don't we define hookah? How do we distinguish it? Is it vaping? Is it what is it?
I'm gonna leave that one to you because my only experience with hookah is I went to brunch with my husband one day and we didn't research this restaurant very well, I'll admit. And I was just excited about the shrimp and grits. But I get there and there's a hookah lounge. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can deal with it slightly. And by the second shrimp, I was sick. I couldn't sit in there any longer. And so hookah is a way to aerosolize a liquid, I believe, in a contraption that has various replaceable parts. I'm not a hookah expert, as you can tell. But as she mentioned, it can generate higher levels of emissions than e-cigarettes as well as cigarettes. But a recent study from Georgia State also indicated that can also contribute to poor indoor air quality. So just imagine these restaurants that have poor ventilation as we sit here are also introducing hookah. You also are jeopardizing your customers' health and well-being by having a hookah lounge right next door to the shrimp and grits. So, but you may have a more technical explanation about what hookah
I
is.
might have a teenage explanation. But I do want to just state that we are sensitive to the cultural history of, you know, using the hookah together, right? And so we don't want to diminish that. And we don't want anyone to feel that we're attacking their culture by discussing hookah. A lot of folks may have them in their home. You know, it's just part of your culture. I think what we're addressing today is sort of the adaptation of a specific community to using hookahs. Is that correct?
Correct.
The
Okay.
hookah lounges that have popped up everywhere.
Around Atlanta, that's
Yes.
not a cultural phenomenon. And then the other thing is, if you're not using it the way that your culture or the originators of using the hookah intended and without the knowledge, then it poses more risk, right? So I think that that's something to be considered as well.
So as we are winding down slowly, before we move off of hookah, do we know about the differences in the chemicals that are being released in the entire room as opposed to when you're doing
There's a higher
something
concentration.
of
There's a higher concentration of nicotine. There's a higher concentration of the, I'm going to speak in more plain terms, of the agents that can damage the lungs. Remember, I was talking about those that can directly hurt the cells of the lungs. There are more of those in there as well. It's a higher concentration. And so the way that it usually comes in like a little triangle. It looks like if you've ever gone to some of those, you know, fancy stores or certain stores, and they'll have those triangle type air incense. It looks like one of those, and then you put it in. People have different flavors, and then as it gets, you know, used, you see it burning, right? So it has that same burning effect as cigarettes. Cigarettes have a filter. This one doesn't have a filter.
So there's a combustion process
Yes.
that occurs. And so during the combustion process, we do know that there's harmful byproducts that are generated
Mhm.
that can be
Benzenes.
benzenes,
Mhm.
polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are cancer-causing agents
Mhm.
that can disrupt cell processes, can cause DNA damage, mutations that can lead and drive cancer risk. Yes, so yes, I'm not a hookah expert, but as you stated, that there is elevated carcinogens and cancer-causing agents within hookah emissions.
So I guess to wrap all of this up, this discussion that we've had, what is one science-based truth that you would give to kind of cut through all of the noise, the misinformation that is out there about e-cigarettes, vaping? What's one science-based truth that each of you would give?
You know, I would approach it based on the motivation and what the person would want to do. So for example, I don't know if I should reveal too much, but I might. So when I was younger, I used to sing a lot. And then I learned that, you know, any type of smoke that is coming in, you know, can paralyze the cilia that help to move out the bacteria and just helps to move out all the debris that we breathe in. And if that's paralyzed, it can affect the way that, you know, your voice sounds. And so, you know, I would find the motivation, hey, so you said that, you know, one day, you know, you want to play for the NBA, right? Or you want to play for the NFL, or, you know, you want to be a dancer. Well, this is how it can affect you and how it can potentially stop you from doing what you want to do. You said that, you know, you want to be a mom and see your grandchildren. Well, you may not be there as long. Yeah, I'm still upset that my father passed away at 19 when I was 19 and he was 60. You know, that's really unfair. It's unfair that they handed out those cigarettes to all of the, you know, the folks in the Navy. You know, that's really, really unfair. So thinking about those consequences, I think is important. And sometimes it's not just telling them, but like seeing it visually, you know, seeing not just a commercial, but being able to present sort of the lifeline of what could happen. I think a lot of us, when we saw the commercial of the woman who was breathing through the passemeral valve, right, in her neck, that stopped a lot of people, right, from even starting. So we have to get real and show the real consequences. We have to show the consequences of being in the ICU with your family member and having to decide whether you want to keep them on a ventilator or not when you're 19. That's not okay.
Well, my science-based fact I'll leave you all with is your behavior matters in more ways than one. And recent evidence from our own research that's NIH funded just demonstrated that your vaping behavior contributes to your clinical outcomes and adverse outcomes at that. And so we've also established that your vaping behavior exposes you to higher levels of these cancer-causing agents, the heavy metals, the chemicals, the particulate matter. But we've also linked this behavioral pattern to adverse outcomes within the oral cavity. We've shown that higher vaping patterns or higher puff volumes, how much you breathe in, can generate a clinical outcome in your oral cavity that can lead to early onset periodontal disease. So does anybody want yuck mouth? I don't think so. We don't want yuck mouth, no. And so periodontal disease is actually also a determinant for other diseases, cardiovascular disease, correct? Yes? And we also know the fact that 19% of e-cigarette users are more likely to experience heart failure. So please take that and understand your behaviors. And when we know better, we can do better. And I'll end with one last thing. Education is key. It's the cornerstone of public health prevention. And at Chemical Insights Research Institute, we've generated a number of different educational resources that can be observed through the QR code on the screen here. But also we've developed these really cool comic books for teenagers to understand the hazards and risks associated with vaping, but also just give them some awareness and some fun attributes around making sure they're protecting themselves and gaining the education and the awareness they need to ensure they're making informed decisions.
And I think the last word would need to be, what can someone do if they want to quit? So, can you share what you would advise someone to do who is addicted, who's a smoker or someone who vapes, and they want to quit but are having a hard time? What would be your advice?
Yes, so I'm actually a consultant as well with the Opioid Prevention Network. And when we look at addiction and when we look at the way that the brain functions, we have to understand that just shutting something off immediately, the going cold turkey, really doesn't work. So with all of the medications, all of the drugs, you have to titrate down. And it has to be some time. You can't do it over 1 week. It could take months because your body has to create a normal state, and then your cells have to repair themselves. And so it's important to, again, work with someone who implements motivational interviewing, provide rewards. Okay, hey, they were giving Magic Mountain tickets to get a COVID vaccine, right? Giving all of these other things. If we know that this is going to affect 3 generations, then we should care enough to invest to help provide that outlet for them and the support services for them to be able to stop. And then again, getting down to that underlying root of why they're doing it. I mean, should they actually be on an antidepressant, right? Should they be on a different medication? And so those are the things we have to think about.
Well said. I can't top that.
So what I heard was that setting expectations, that it's not something cold turkey, won't necessarily work for everyone. Maybe one, but for most people, setting expectations that it may take time, months, in order to reduce your addiction to the nicotine, but then also that they need to be working with a team.
Right.
Go and get help somewhere, because there may be some other things that are underlying this addiction that need to be addressed.
Right.
With that, I think I am going to open it up for questions. I see a number of hands. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. You guys were amazing. I was sitting here dying with this question for a while. We know that this is bad for our bodies. How is it that a 7-year-old and 11-year-old can buy it? Why don't we have regulations on who can buy the vapes? And what can we do to help that happen?
I think we need to call Dr. Bolden back up here. Hey, let him take that one. Sorry, I'm calling a favor, calling a
On
All
a
right,
friend.
I can take on this favor. Yes, there are laws. You're supposed to be 21 to buy any tobacco product. So how do they get them? Friends. They get them from parents.
I take them.
They steal them. Do you know that if you go in and steal a pack of cigarettes, they will not chase you?
Mm.
Why? Because they know you're going to smoke them, right? And you're going to become addicted, and then you're going to come back and buy them. So, yes, they're not enforcing it. And what needs to happen, again, I have to say, we're not against the smoker, but it's the industry and it's those folks. So I can only use the example that they used in Detroit, where I think it was 7 convenience stores. They got caught selling vaping products and tobacco products to underage kids. Law enforcement had to come in and they shut them down. So the politicians have to be aware of it, and they have to have the political wherewithal to actually pass laws to actually shut them down.
So it's the boots on the ground, right? So knowing what's in your community and then actually I'm just going to go off of what he was saying there. You can write to your congressperson. You can write to your city council. You can call them. You can walk into their office. We're, just a stone's throw away from the Capitol right here. You just bring your ID and you can go in and make appointments. So we have to not be afraid of the political system. They are there because we employ them with our tax dollars.
Next question.
It's not a question. I just want to add to Greg. So my name is Nika. I'm with the Heart Coalition. We're located on Cascade. So we do have youth that's a part of SINAR's programs with the Department of Revenue that goes into the stores with the agents, and they actually try and buy tobacco products. So that's how those stores are getting caught selling to underage kids, because like Greg said, there are laws that regulates you have to be 21. The age went up, 2 years ago, to be 21 instead of 18 to buy nicotine products. So it is things put in place to try and catch people. They do, but they have a program for that as well. My personal kids, my biological kids, actually was a part of the SINARS program for the state of Georgia, the Department of Revenue, where they tried to do shoulder taps. They're called shoulder taps, or they go into the stores. They can't lie and say, well, yeah, I'm 21. They can go in there and just try and buy it. And if the person don't card them, they do get in trouble about it.
One more question.
Another question.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to thank the panel. I am Blake Allen, a fourth-year PhD candidate, and my research interest is in prostate cancer. So I'd like to apologize for my multi-layered question before I ask it, because my wheels are just turning back here. And so you guys mentioned a little bit about marijuana. And so within health, we've seen as of, in the recent 10 years, how CBD or marijuana has been able to help just different diseases. And there's one study I want to bring up where after women gave birth, they were provided CBD, not sure the form. And from there, they were able to see an increase of vitamin D receptors, which is a very important for specifically not just African-American women who are pregnant, but African-Americans in general. We see a general deficiency. And so my question is, because you see the benefits of this, right? I just want to hear your insight on, I guess, educating people, especially where marijuana is legal, on the ways they can ingest and inhale or exhale, or maybe not that in general with CBD, just because of the different ways. Like you have your Rick Simpson oil, and then you have like there's CBD, and also the containers you were talking about, and then people put the marijuana in like the different leaves, but that's taken away from the benefits. So I just wanted to hear your insight in like how in the future, I guess moving forward, how CBD not only being used as a medicine, but because we know that there are the risk of, like you were saying, the buildup in the lungs, and then of course lung cancer. How do you see in the future, just kind of spearheading this? Thank you.
Sure, I'll take that one. So I just want to make a differentiation between THC, that's the tetrahydrochloride or chlorine, and CBD. So CBD in and of itself does not necessarily have those addictive factors when it's in the cream form. CBD is, it affects the pain receptors. So has anyone received acupuncture in here? So if you've received acupuncture, you're actually inducing the same effects of CBD, okay? And so it releases, we have in our body an endogenous CBD that we can release, okay? And then acupuncture helps to release that. That's why it's so effective. But your other question about the different forms. So first I'll go into, you mentioned prostate cancer, right? So when we're looking at using marijuana or CBD for prostate cancer, one of the things that you have to realize first, there's a life differential, right? They have cancer. What does the THC do? What does the Marinol do? What does the CBD do? It helps to induce appetite, because one of the things that happens with cancer and with chemotherapy in particular is that there's a loss of appetite. What does cancer do? It steals all the energy from your other cells. And that's, people don't die from the cancer itself. They die from the fact that their heart, their lungs, their kidneys can no longer function because they don't have the energy to. So by helping folks gain an appetite, be able to eat, that's why it's used. Particularly, I think California was one of the first states that started to allow medical marijuana. I know a lot of people who have a medical marijuana card, including people who live in my house, and who were on the streets of San Francisco promoting it and legalizing it. So, I'm not going to say that. So I'm very familiar with it. I grew up around it in the Bay Area, in Oakland, California. It was normal. And so I think we have to look at the difference between smoking it, right? And then also the other forms. If you want, I can go into the biochemistry and the science behind it a little bit more. But just to let you know, there's different effects. Was that clear? Everyone? Okay.
There's a question in the back.
Last question.
All right, so I think Dr. Wright did mention the Truth Campaign, which is what I saw growing up in the early 2000s, and that was one of the reasons I didn't smoke growing up, because I saw the lady with a hole in the neck, and so that really worked. But we've seen decades of tobacco regulation be undone by e-cigs and everything else, and we know that lung cancer incidence historically has been tied to smoking patterns. And so I'm pretty sure in the future we'll see a sharp uptick in those incidence rates. But my question was, since we're back at risk, shouldn't we be pushing for expanded screening, since we know that it's coming, and fresh campaigns that actually target the youth and deter them from smoking, such as the Truth Campaign, like how now the president has said that Tylenol causes autism. And I feel like on social media, that narrative was promoted over the last couple of years. So how hard is it for us to promote the narrative that you won't be a football player if you keep smoking cigarettes? You won't be a dancer if you keep smoking cigarettes? And then what can we do at a local level to prevent the 86 Cloud 9s that are popping up in our neighborhoods that are disproportionately affected by lung cancer? And even with the tobacco use, African Americans tend to have lower pack per year smoking numbers than white Americans, but the outcomes are still poor. The screening guidelines set forth by the United States Preventative Task Force, they use smoking patterns, they use pack per year, and African Americans aren't being captured in those rates. So how can we continue to push for policy expansion so that our communities are not harmed? Because we're the ones facing the brunt of the e-cig, pandemic, epidemic.
I love it. I love it. Give her a round of applause for that question.
Yeah. I was going to say, bring her a chair right up here.
Yep.
And sit her right up here.
So for our health, we always think about policy, but what it really comes down to is someone having access to see someone who can actually do that, who can actually count the pack years for them, right? So we need providers who can do that. And that's why at Morehouse School of Medicine, we're working our butts off to train these folks, to train these young people to be amazing healthcare providers. Okay, if you want something figured out that's difficult, you should come to one of our clinics. All right, because we're going to listen to you. We're going to count your packs per year, because they got it right on the test, or if they got it wrong, we help them get it right again. But, we have to have more healthcare providers who can actually do that screening. Okay, a lot of folks, and you need a certain level of education to be able to do that. You need to be able to explain the effects to them. And then the last thing I will say about this, about the, Cloud9s and those things, that's legislation. And then, we can do what we do. I mean, we can have protest in front of them to say and let the owners know, hey, we don't want this in our community. Make it difficult for them, I don't want to say do the opposite of sit-ins, but sort of like that.
Excellent, Dr. Mercado. And I'd also like to add that we need to get the insurance companies on board.
Right.
Because the screening element may be jeopardized if the insurance company doesn't pay for it, doesn't pay the doctors to do it. And then also the doctors need to be more aware of what questions to ask. So with vaping, it's not packs per day, it's puffs per day. How many puffs? But I doubt that that question is on the screening. No. And I know that it's not because I've talked to the American Thoracic Society and clinicians and respiratory therapists, and they're trying to champion change around the screening process around e-cigarettes. Right now, the only questions that exist is, do you smoke e-cigarettes or do you smoke? But we need more lengthier, more comprehensive questioning so we can get to the root of how e-cigarette emissions and vaping may be contributing to these different diseases and potentially cancer outcomes.
Right. And then one last thing, when you're talking about mortality, that can happen, 20, 30 years later, we'll be developing newer technologies, but right now we do have low dose CT, right? How do we get there? They need to see a healthcare provider who will do the screening and then who will refer them to get that done. So at the end of the day, it comes down to that person having a healthcare provider and a team around them to support them.
Help me thank this wonderful panel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Quarles. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, give our panelists a round of applause and our moderator. All right, we are almost there. Almost. So, our last panel, right? So let's do a recap. So we talked about the history, right? The history of the tobacco plant and then menthol cigarettes. Then we talked about the research, right? So now let's go into actually the diseases, the impact. So with that being said, I would like to invite our moderator, Ms. Kristen Vaughn, our new Chief Content Officer for BlackDoctor.org, Carrie Gober from the American Cancer Society, and Dr. Eugene Manley from SHEC. All right, you guys. You are now in the hands of Miss Kristen Vaughn. Here we go.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. All right. Welcome, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Dr. Carter said, this time we're going to talk about community voices against lung cancer. It's not only smoke. And first, I would love for the panelists to introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. I'm going to start all the way on the end first with Carrie Gober from the American Cancer Society.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am Carrie Gober. I am the Chief of Staff of our research team at the American Cancer Society. We have a number of collaborations with Morehouse and also BDO as well. I'm sure that you are all familiar with ACS. Many of the medical students or researchers here are quite familiar with our publications, Cancer Facts and Figures, that comes out of our team. Also, One publication that I'm going to mention today is our Tobacco Atlas that we just launched probably a couple of weeks ago. I'm also going to leave the links as well with the team here so they can share those. I've been with the American Cancer Society for 14 years now in different capacities, but most importantly, I am a patient advocate. So that's the thing that I like to highlight, like beyond all of the accolades and all of the other things we do professionally, most important to me is that I am a patient advocate.
That's so important. Thank you so much. Dr. Eugene Manley, yes, you've got your own mic.
Yes, we can do it though.
We can share.
All right, I'm Dr. Eugene Manley, and I'm the founder of the SHEC Foundation, which stands for STEM and Cancer Health Equity. And broadly, high level, we really work to increase STEM workforce diversity and get information and resources to patients to help them understand basic medical care and cancer care so they can advocate for what they're entitled to versus what they actually really get. But by training, well, depending on which hat I'm wearing, I'm an engineer, I'm a scientist, I'm a patient advocate, and I'm a health equity champion. But I also grew up in inner city Detroit, first gen dirt poor, and my father was a chronic smoker. And probably because of his smoking, probably is the reason I'm a chronic asthmatic. And I used to be in a hospital 20 to 30 times a year with my asthma until I was 10. So and so I didn't know it was going to lead me to a career doing stuff in lung cancer. That just happened to come along the way. But because of how I grew up and how I seen how healthcare is delivered, and then as I work through the nonprofit space, I've just decided, how do we get information to people that need it most? So that's what I do.
That's fantastic. I just have to say, I love the fact that both of the guests up here as moderators and as guests are really advocates. You're not up here just sharing your stories, not just going to work and doing the things, but really out here advocating. And it's interesting you said that your father was a chronic smoker. My father was a chronic smoker as well. We're going to be talking a little bit about secondhand smoke and the effects as well. Were there many people in the audience who grew up in a smoking household? Anybody? Okay. I mean, I want to say that actually that's about half, at least, growing up in a smoking household. So, well, let's get right into the conversation. First off, let's expand the narrative. From what we've been talking about right now, we've been talking about the, smoking, tobacco, vaping, all of the different forms that we've seen. When we talk about lung cancer, we often think first about smoking. But there are many different types of ways to get lung cancer. And it's really important for us to highlight the fact that you don't just get it as a smoker. Let me just start with you over there, Carrie. Can you tell us a little bit, what are some of the other risk factors that lead to lung cancer?
So I just wanted to level set too, as we, speak to our virtual audience as well. And not to recluse anybody from this conversation, but of course, I'm an African American woman, and African Americans have the shortest survival rate really across all cancers. And so I really want to highlight that for the audience, because I think sometimes as we are in spaces like this, that our audience needs to know, our community needs to know. They need to hear that. The other panelists, they've highlighted a lot of data and things like that, but we also talked about the space of transparency. And in this particular climate, we certainly have to have transparency and be serious about our health. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to make sure that I highlighted that.
Yeah, let's get into it. I
actually met, before coming here today, I met with our team that does tobacco research. And there were a few key things, some notes that I'm going to read, that they wanted me to actually highlight for the community and for the audience, that they really understand like the data that we actually research. Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death in the US for both men and women.
Wow.
And these are things that I know we don't have the time to really go into the depthness, but I think we need to take a moment just to think about, to let some of these things just sit as we're in community and as we're talking to other people. They also mentioned as well, smoking causes nearly 90% of lung cancer cases. Quitting smoking at any age, obviously, significantly will reduce your risk. Secondhand smoke increases lung cancer risk by 20 to 30%.
Wow.
As we've had some examples here today. And of course, early detection is one of the things, and I didn't quite get to your question, but I think also we have to also realize, as the other panelists have already mentioned, there's barriers to actually getting screening.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a problem. There's also, I feel personally, as we talk about there's stigma around lung cancer, we also need to go deeper into talking about the mental health piece and why people are smoking. So there's like this pathway. And I think there was another young lady that asked the question earlier about the thread of like all of our organizations as we come together. We have to put together some type of programming to have these very transparent conversations. It can't just be in one setting. It's going to have to be a series of conversations.
A series of conversations, organizing together that advocacy and really rallying around the community. Did you want to add on to that, Dr. Mann?
Yes. So I will say roughly 60%, if the number is right, of lung cancer is probably due to a history of smoking. That doesn't mean that because you got lung cancer, you were a person that smoked. Some, unfortunately, with the anti-smoking campaigns of the late 80s, they did a great job of giving you this graphic language and saying, well, you know, smoking's bad and evil and you're going to die. And so that became permeated in society. So that leads to some stigma on top of the other stuff. So unfortunately, now you get people that will say, oh, well, you got lung cancer, so you must have deserved to get it. So whether you have a history of smoking, you do not deserve to get lung cancer. But if you hear someone with breast cancer or prostate cancer, oh, I'm sorry, what can we do to help? But then the person with lung cancer tends to be ostracized. But the other risk factors, the second leading cause of lung cancer is radon. Specifically states like Kentucky, where, you know, the distilling of whiskey, and as it goes over the lime water, it leaches more radon out. States like Pennsylvania with high radon. So in the 80s, I don't know if they're doing it much now, they started to talk about radon detection and mitigation, but we haven't heard as much of that. But that's the second leading cause of lung cancer. And then the other risk factors that we don't talk about or often brushed by, indoor cooking modules, job exposures like firefighters, brush fires, I'm trying to think, genetics, disposition, you know, indirectly SDOH, more so where you live. Like, are you near toxic dumps, or are you living near freeways? Because redlining is one of the leading causes of lung cancer, just putting people in places where they have to breathe bad air. Air pollution, so airplane exhaust. So those are other risk factors that aren't often talked about. And what people don't understand is there's also, maybe now because they're doing a better job of early detection and survivorship, we're now getting more people show up with lung cancer that don't have a history of smoking at all. And they probably always have been there, but in the 80s, everyone just assumed you had a smoking history. So particularly Asian females have some of the highest lung cancer rates, and they have no history of smoking at all. And we still don't know why, and we're still trying to understand it. And now I'll touch on an aside point that someone asked about screening guidelines and why don't we include vaping. The actual guidelines are really based on pack years of smoking history. And that is actually a hard concept under, but pack years really, at high level, a pack year is you smoke a pack a day per year. That's a pack year. So 20 pack years means you smoked a pack a day for 20 years, or you smoked 2 packs a day for 10 years. So people always misunderstand smoke, pack history. But we also, sometimes when you're working with underserved communities, you have to ask the question a different way than the guidelines tell you. And if you do the guidelines, you'll never get the answer out. So you have to work with people to understand how they are actually going to say they use the product.
Thank you so much. I mean, thank you for bringing that up. There are a lot of factors that do go into it. And I'm glad that you brought up radon. You actually stole my thunder. I was going to bring that up next. And one of the reasons is, like you said, radon is the #2 cause of lung cancer. Tell people, especially our audience at home, what exactly is radon? How does it contribute? And why are Black and Brown communities more susceptible to having exposure to radon in their homes? And also, why are they less likely to know that they either have exposure or that they even need to get tested, and how to go about that? There's a lot of misconceptions as well about what goes into the testing, the cost, and all of those things. And yet, it seems to be that there is some disproportionate exposure to radon. Who would like to take that one?
Well, also, I know radon's a colorless gas. It's a natural product. And it partially impacts you because of radiation. So the thing is, we don't really. That's all I got on radon. I used to know more, but what I will say,
a lot of it, we do know that it is a lot of times in the soil. It shows up in the foundations
it
of
shows
the
up.
home.
So this is why we were
And it ends up
talking
in a
about
lot of
testing.
homes, and not necessarily older homes. It
Correct.
could be even newer homes. That
And I will say a radon test is only $20 to $30.
Where could you find one?
Oh, no, now you can.
I've heard that you could find them at
you can Google.
Big box home stores.
Google.
Big box home stores, from what I heard, for $20, and yet a $20 test
And
could perhaps save your whole family's life or your exposure.
And I think radon mitigation, that's a little more expensive. That might be in I think I looked at some numbers, maybe in the $700 to $1,500 range. But you can mitigate radon, but often we don't do enough of educating people about the risk of radon, and
you don't even know it's in your home to go get the $20 test, let alone go into the mitigation. I mean, how do you even know what you don't know? And yet there's more radon exposure in Black and Brown communities disproportionately. And here you've got the #2 cause of lung cancer right there in our communities. So what do you have to say about that?
So I think that the theme of this afternoon, the most important thing is education and awareness. We have to do more of that. We also, something that I heard one of our scientists and epidemiologists from Ohio say, that we have to come out of the labs. We have to come out of our offices, our virtual offices as well. And I keep reiterating this point because it's so important, is that we have to actually go into community, even this community here around Morehouse School of Medicine, AU Center, and actually let people know. I encourage our researchers to come out and help people understand the science that you are doing in a very lay, way, because we know that there's medical mistrust. People are not, even when we talk about clinical trials, and I know that's another topic, but all of these things have a thread into better health outcomes. So I think that's the most important thing that I've got out of a lot of the conversations today.
It's the education and awareness. Think about when you see the trucks that go out to a community resource fair or something like that. What if they handed out $20 radon kits? Handed them out to people. That could be an education right there with a little pamphlet about, just put this out there, Just interesting ways to kind of think about when we talk about what are our next steps. that we could look at. But you know, one of the big things you talked on, Dr. Manley, that I think is really key is the stigma. Just like you said, when you hear from people different types of cancer, you never want to hear from someone a diagnosis. But when someone says, I have lung cancer, when on top of the diagnosis, people act towards them that, you know, you did this to yourself. It could have been preventable. You've always been a smoker. As long as I've known you, you've been a heavy smoker. Didn't you know this was going to happen? Or something along those lines. I mean, how does that affect treatment for someone who's a smoker in terms of them following up on treatment? How does that affect research dollars? Do research dollars go towards lung cancer as much, you know, from the American Cancer Society? Does research dollars, do they go as much to lung cancer as they do to other cancers? Or do they consider that something that this is almost like a preventable, even though we now know how many other ways there are to get smoke, to get lung cancer. And there's even advocacy, people feeling like they want to be advocates for lung cancer when there is a stigma.
So I'll start first. It's certainly a priority of the American Cancer Society. We have a national lung cancer roundtable that comes together scientists, patient advocates as well. Also, we have an advocacy arm of the American Cancer Society where they are going to like the legislators and talking to them about tobacco policies and things like that. So it's certainly a priority of ACS.
For sure.
We, as you all know, that funding for research is under attack at this particular moment, but we will continue. Our teams are continuing to fight for more funding. We also fund external research from our extramural teams, where we fund other scientists outside of ACS as well. Many of you may know about that, but I don't want to say that we have there's breast cancer. It's all cancers. We are trying to end cancer for everyone. So that's.
So
I'll let Dr.
What would you say, Dr. Manley?
So what I'll say, even though we know lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death in the US and worldwide, it gets way, way, way less funding and attention than breast, colon, and prostate. Those programs have known screening programs, they're promoted, they're advertised, people use them, but when it comes to lung cancer, we are still so far behind. Depending on the statistic you look at, lung cancer screening rates are as low as 7%, but then if you look at another, maybe it's up to 20%. It's still not as high as it needs to be, but a lot of this is educating physicians, providers, patients about the need for screening and why it's important. And following up on the screening guidelines, we talk about smoking history, but if you want to include things like vaping and radon and stuff, then you have to, with your navigation team, write that in as an alternative criteria or an add-on criteria, but you have to do before you start your screening program, which a lot of people don't know. You can include those, but you have to write them in the protocol. So it is possible, but just not a lot of people do it.
Are we seeing lung cancer incidence on the rise? And is that tied at all to vaping, to alternate forms that we're seeing? Just curious.
That was a question that I did ask a lot of our researchers. And from our perspective, we don't have enough evidence data at this particular moment that we have, our researchers specifically have studied in order to say that lung cancer is linked to vaping. And so I want to make sure that I comment that we did not want to actually discuss that point because we don't have enough evidence to actually share.
I've actually seen one study recently, and I'll just say that it's one that I've seen, so I'm not saying it's a massive amount, but there was a connection that they were saying between vaping and like some of the restrictions on it, that young people were actually moving back towards traditional cigarettes because of the restrictions on vaping. And I just think of all the work that organizations, that like CFTK has been doing, the American Cancer Society, all kind of organizations to really prevent smoking with young people, and to now see that reversing, just coming kind of backdooring its way in with vaping and with different things and the flavors and everything. And then now the restrictions come up, and then now they've been kind of introduced, it sounds like, into tobacco, and now finding their way back when so many strides have been made. Is it disappointing to you with the American Cancer Society to see, do you feel like the strides that you guys were making against traditional cigarettes, now that you're seeing more things like e-cigarettes and the vaping and the hookah popularity and stuff?
And I want to correct myself. We have limited data. Let me say that because our researchers have studied it. I think that especially like lung cancer needs to get more attention. And I think we're moving. I mean, we've definitely made strides.
Yeah.
Do we have further strides to go?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that's gonna, again, it takes a collective to make those strides. It's gonna take research, it's gonna take policy, it's gonna take physicians, it's gonna take everything that we've talked about again today, providers, insurance companies,
Yeah.
to come together and really like parse out like how we move this to the next step. Because we have been working on lung cancer or working in the space of research for a long time.
Absolutely. Dr. Manley, talk a little bit about the work that you do and the Black and Brown community.
All right.
What are the next steps?
So before I do that, one, I want to say that the lung cancer funding has really been drastically cut. Like basically the DOD program, all their lung cancer funding was cut this past year, which really was another path to funding for a lot of researchers that couldn't get the NIH or ACS grants. So lung cancer still is woefully underfunded. So part of the work, I do many things. Part of the work that I do is, my training is a molecular biologist in lung cancer and combination drug therapies that transition to patient advocacy. But I've seen, talking to a lot of Black patients, the things they lament are not having access, not being offered biomarker testing, having symptoms misdiagnosed, not being heard, bias in hospital interactions, whether it's with doctors or the staff, those are two of the biggest things that will keep a person from coming in or out of a clinic. Like if they don't feel they're listened to or respected, then why should I bother? And then when you think of a lot of the issues that Black families face, which are often multi-generational, maybe this person's a caregiver, or maybe they're working 2 jobs, that they're front-facing jobs. They can't just take a day off and get insurance. They can't do that, and then they can't go to the site because it's not regular work hours, or they're on Medicaid and they're trying to do transport. And while Medicaid can get you transport, I had orthopedic surgery and I was on Medicaid this year. Transport is not your good friend. Because when transport says they're gonna be there and they are not, or they're 1 or 2 hours late, then you're late to your appointment, then you get labeled non-compliant, even though it's through no fault of your own making. And then these places don't often work around evening hours or weekends to allow you to navigate care. So we have multiple factors at play, but some of the work I do is really speaking to community groups about lung cancer screening and disparities. Sometimes I speak with Carmanos because I'm from Detroit originally. So whenever the patients see me, there's a Black person in lung cancer, because they just never really see anyone. The other big thing we do, we create infographics to break down medical terminology and explain stuff in terms that's understandable. And I run an annual lung cancer health equity / intervention summit that's focused on solutions that are reducing disparities and inequities for Black, Hispanic, and other underserved communities. And so our 3rd summit will be next month, the 24th and 25th in Chicago at the University of Illinois Cancer Center.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's something, definitely share that information and share that on blackdoctor.org.
I also wanted to share too that sometimes Again, both of my parents were diagnosed with colon cancer and breast cancer. But when we talk about biomarker testing, we also need to clarify for the community that is not free. And so while we encourage those things, and it's biomarker testing, genetic testing, that also comes at a cost and it's also a barrier.
Yes.
So again, that advocacy, talking to, providers, insurance companies, my hope would be for a lot of these tests to be preventative, like regular preventative care.
Like how you get a mammogram.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
And that is very true. We roughly have about 11 known biomarkers for lung cancer that they can take a tumor sample, look at whether it's a signal transduction cascade or an immune marker. But often people only get 1 to 3 of these biomarkers tested. So if you only get 1 to 3, but you may have one of the others, then you have your doctor, whether by design or not, has just done a disservice, because then you don't even know what you might possibly have a treatment for. And so many people miss things that they could catch early. But then even if you get treated, the other downside is then the long-term cost. And that's a whole separate issue.
Well, one of the things you guys mentioned, and I love that you're talking about the barriers, because that's something that's really big, and we have to acknowledge that for the community. Particularly, like you said, the cost of the testing, whether insurance is going to cover it. If you don't have insurance, you already know that you're at a disadvantage right there. What do you say to people to advocate for themselves? Like you said, when you go to your physician and already you might face a bias at the hospital, you face a bias at your medical center. I'm thinking of that person who lives in a household where they're not a smoker, but somebody in the household is. They're asthmatic. Maybe they don't know that they're living in an area that's in a highly polluted area, or they do know that they're in a highly polluted area. I live in New York City. There was a lot of residual effect from 9/11 that we're still seeing today with first responders. A lot of lung conditions that came out of people breathing that air that just lived in proximity, weren't even down there, as a firefighter or a first responder, but just lived there and breathed in those particles into their lungs that face complications. How do you go about advocating for yourself to get whatever testing or the next step is?
So what I have encouraged a lot of people, and even within my own family, you have to have a care team outside of your physicians, outside of your doctors. The collective of this group is a care team.
Yeah, who's in the care team? Who do we need?
And you also have to use leadership courage when you need to hire and fire some people that are part of your care team. I'll use myself as an example. Sometimes when I'm looking for a physician, I go on, I guess it's the report of different doctors and things like that. But I realize too, it's Dr. Manley, it's you, it's the other doctors that are in the room too that need to be a part of my care team. And also even some nurses or some patient advocates also need to be a part, because they all are in different capacities and can help advocate for you and or can interpret some of the information that's given to patients. So I think that is important to make sure you reevaluate who your care team is, who your support system is, even if they don't have a medical background.
Yes.
Sometimes it's good to have just 2 or 3 second, fourth opinions.
I love that. Going down to the fourth opinion. You need it. You absolutely need it.
Yep. I'll concur, because the hardest thing for someone to get is a lung cancer diagnosis. You'll be in a doctor, they'll give you this big binder of all this stuff, and I guarantee you're not thinking about anything in that binder. You're thinking about my family, what can I pay for, who's going to look after them, am I going to lose my job, am I going to keep you are not thinking anything about it. So if you can Not all places have them, but if a place has a great navigator, nurse navigator, patient navigator service, they can help you try to understand the terminology and treatments and try to help set you up. But you also need a coordination of a whole care team, which is easier said than done. They all need to be on the same page and looking out for your best interests, not theirs. And so when you don't have that, then you have to go to advocacy orgs that might have information or resources, or know doctors that might be able to refer you to someone that can help. So you can work around, but it's not easy.
It is not. That's why I said sometimes you have to hire, rehire, fire, interview, and go through that process of your care team.
So now let's talk about outcomes. We're talking about there's not as much research money as we want to see. We're talking about the highest, cancer that's out there, the one that's the most diagnosed. What are your organizations doing to assist with treatment outcomes, to talk to, what are the advances that are helping with treatment outcomes, or what do we need to know about lung cancer right now? Are there new methods that are of dealing with it? Are there new treatments? What can someone who has been recently diagnosed, what are the resources that they could look into?
One resource that we have is our ACS 360. And it is an assessment that I've actually taken, has amazing, like you go through the assessment specifically for lung cancer.
Is it online?
It is online, and I'm certainly going to share the link with this team and everyone here, so it can be shared with the community as well. But it gives excellent specific lung cancer education and information. And also, obviously, you can call ACS, our 1-800 line. We have 24-hour employees and staff that can help and assist with helping you navigate. And a lot of times, I think that a lot of people don't know the breadth of the work that the American Cancer Society does and or what we provide, because we have a lot of patient support services as well.
I would have never thought that you guys had 24-hour support over there. Well, I mean, what are some of the services that you guys provide that people could access either online or on the phone?
So I'm gonna just highlight some of the high level support that for cancer patients. We have Hope Lodges, and I don't want to quote the number, but we have them throughout the country. We also have Road to Recovery, which is also, we actually pick up cancer patients and help them get to their appointments. But we assist with any type of, screening information, whatever you need as related to cancer. And we also know that some cancer also is a thread of other things that are happening, or other, other health conditions as well. So you can actually talk to some of our teams specifically, and they can help you. They're basically online patient navigators in some instances, but they can get you to local patient navigators throughout the country.
That's fantastic. And I think that's a resource. Like you said, I don't think people understood the breadth of ACS. So that's fantastic. Dr. Manley, what about you?
I'm a little bit slower. Not because I am slow, but because I just launched 2 years ago. But some of the stuff, we're doing, I still partner with academic institutions, and we do surveys with patients. So we publish about the experiences that Black patients face navigating lung cancer screening and diagnosis. And even those that are educated still face barriers to testing and the right trials and the right therapies. We also published a study where we looked at all the lung cancer cell lines that are out there. And of over 800 cell lines, maybe only 30 were from Black individuals across the whole set. And but if that's our starting material, there were none for Hispanic, none for Asian, none for
and tell us, what is a cell line?
So basically, So basically,
in layman's terms,
we always hear people talk about clinical trials. We have this therapy, but most of your therapies start from cell lines. often our cell lines are derived from tumors that we get from patients that we break down to the single cell level. And then we can, to regrow them back and then look at the different patterns of gene expression in them or biomarkers of, and then we come back from those cell lines and then we try to identify new targets or therapies that can be developed. And then they go through the whole clinical trial development process. But basically we saw a lack of cell lines from Black individuals across the board. And so what that means is all the therapies that are coming out are not designed for Black populations.
Interesting. So now how would we get more cell lines in? Where does that start? Does it start on a physician level? Does that start?
That's a whole.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
that's
Open
a
up a whole
multi-tier
can of
problem.
worms.
That starts one. That's part of workforce issue. We need a more diverse workforce that understands and can work with these underserved populations. We need people that can do research with these underserved populations, help empower them, making sure they have control of their cell lines and data so they understand the results of the studies. So that's multi-tiered. That's a whole another 30 minutes.
So we'll put a pin in that and just go forward with some of the other things you're doing to help with treatment outcomes and to help in the Black and brown community.
Yep. And so we do our lung summit every year, and I see Kim in the back. She thought she was hiding, but I see you back there. So don't hide. We see your.
We see you, Kim.
You can't hide. And one thing we're going to start, we have our patient advisory board that reviews our infographics to make sure they're patient literate before we put them on the website. And hopefully in the next year or two, we'll work on getting funding to start creating our own online resource for Black and Hispanic patients navigating lung cancer so they can see information from their lens and see people that look like them so they actually feel more engaged in, understanding the disease and navigating her. But that's coming down the pipeline thing.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So now, before we go to questions, if there was one call to action that each of you could give, whether it's about prevention, early detection, advocacy, whether it's to the patient, to the smoker, to the physician, what would the call to action be? I'll start with you, Carrie.
The call to action for me would be screening and early detection. Like we have to encourage communities to try to get screened early. That's most important. I was just in DC last week, and there's an organization called March On, and I was at Howard University Hospital.
Okay.
And there's a documentary, I think it's produced by PBS and Nova, called Critical Condition. I would encourage everyone, and I'll share the link, to see this documentary. If we were to share it in communities, it just opened up. I've been in public health now for 14 years, and it opened up even my trajectory of, it's called critical condition. And it opened up even more so my insight, even as working as a chief of staff in research, I have to personally do more. And so again, that would be the call to action, is that let's come together, let's educate, let's provide education and awareness.
And screenings.
And screening. Let's also try to, from this group, build some type of next step. I don't know, I don't always like to use the word coalition, but let's come back together from this group and say, okay, when are we going to meet again? When are we going to go out into community together as a collective of all of our organizations, the students and medical students? When are we going to come together and say, encourage our young people to actually have careers in science? I think a lot of our young people think it's just doctors and wonderful. We need more physicians.
Mm-hmm.
We also need more representation in clinical research coordinators in other aspects of medicine and science.
100%. Workforce development is huge, and it's definitely a huge priority that we need to focus on more. And that is what's going to help us And now that I'm knowing about the cell lines without even knowing the whole story, I know that we could use more people in doing that work as well. Dr. Manley, your call to action.
Well, since he took my workforce stuff.
Just a little bit of it, so you can
So-
elaborate.
So, yeah, my big thing, I can make a call for a diverse workforce, but making a call for it and it actually being implemented are two different things, because they're still, letting kids know they can go in these STEM fields early, helping them navigate those degrees and degree transitions and getting them the mentorship to get to the next stage. And then how do you help them navigate medical systems, research systems that don't necessarily want to listen to them talk about the issues that impact their communities. And if they raise too many issues, then you're labeled a troublemaker and then you can't advance. So my other call to action would really just be treating all people with lung cancer with respect and dignity. You don't know what caused their lung cancer, what their life history is, what their family, but they all should be treated with dignity and respect, not just judged or prejudged. And that's the best thing you can do for people.
I love that. I think that is so key. And yeah, and also if someone has lung cancer, don't ask if they're a smoker. That doesn't need to be the second question either. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. So I just want to move into the question portion, see if we've got any questions from the audience. I see Dr. Ashanti has, is that Kim?
It's Kim.
Oh my God, Kim, you got up. Wow, I'm so proud of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Goodlow. I'm a member of Dr. Manley's Patient Advisory Board. I'm here today to make a comment about my sister. I became a lung cancer advocate 3 years ago. She was diagnosed February 22 and passed away April 2022. She was a non-smoker, developed symptoms after her diagnosis. I stand on the shoulders of my sister, Dr. Karen Lee Bryant. I am continuing her fight. I saw her take her last breath in the hospital. I made a commitment in the hospital when I saw her take her last breath to dedicate the rest of my life continuing her fight. She did not get a chance. She was a non-smoker. She was my only sister. We were 18 months apart. Since then, I became a lung cancer advocate. I'm affiliated with Dr. Manley's Foundation, the Go-To for Lung Cancer Foundation, and the Longevity Foundation. I am committed to raising awareness throughout the community, educating the community about advocating for early screening, early detection. I am also a heart survivor, 16 years, and I'm affiliated with the American Heart Association, so I advocate for heart health, stroke, and lung cancer. I miss my sister every day. I'm continuing her fight. It wasn't fair, and I'm standing here today to say there's a need in the community to educate everyone about how lung cancer is affecting the Black and brown communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you for doing the hard work and staying out there and doing the fight in your sister's name. That's a beautiful thing.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you. Got another question right there. It's a beautiful color you're wearing.
But Kim had to call me out. Thank you. Thank you. This is my dear advocate friend. I am a partner and connected to her through a family member. My husband passed. He was diagnosed in 2021 of March and was able to get personalized medicine and able to get more targeted medicine down at Moffitt Cancer Center, where I was a former research associate. So my background is cancer health disparities and community engagement. Little did I know, 12 years later, I would be advocating, conducting research, and shifting my role as a wife to being an activist. And so I am Maisha Standifer. I'm a community engagement researcher here, along with being affiliated with the Cancer Health Equity Institute, along with being the assistant director here at Satcher Health Leadership Institute. So I'm excited that we are focusing on a number of collaborative efforts, particularly community efforts here at Morehouse School of Medicine. We're conducting research. So as a research scholar and an activist, I am in places where most people don't talk about, particularly focusing on Black men and women who are under the age of 50 and who may or may not be smokers. Cigarette smokers is not just, again, we're not just focusing on cigarette smoke here, right? We are focusing on other ways, also environmental. But then I'm also, as we talk about, Kim and I have talked about, along with Dr. Manley, working with him at the Longevity Foundation, and we were talking about other ways that we can reach the community. And again, as I talk about a community-based participatory researcher, I am going into barbershops, beauty salons, nail salons, as well as going into gyms. And so I'm proposing some community-based efforts there. But I have not only become, in terms of a caregiver as I was, an advocate and activist, but a grief support specialist, because we not only lost my husband, families lost an uncle, lost a son, he was an assistant pastor as well. So it doesn't just impact one person, particularly when you're focusing on communities of color. You are losing somebody who is a strong staple and an example for others. And he was 48 when he passed. So also I'm creating, and my son and I, we talk about creating kind of passion and creating a product out of pain. And so my son and I have produced a book that we are publishing very shortly to highlight Black boy joy, advocacy, pain, and love through healing as a cancer survivor in the way of grief support for a young Black boy. So I, again, treasure all the advocacy and the commitment and the connection that we have. Thank you so much for having this today.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is, give it up for her. That is absolutely beautiful. And you're right, that is something, grief is something that goes through entire generations, roles in the community, like you mentioned. The project, the passion project you and your son are doing together sounds absolutely beautiful. And I love that you're wrapping the joy in with the grief and the healing. And that's a beautiful message. So sorry for your loss, and congratulations on what you're doing. And the advocacy work, as we talked about, spreading the word and being advocates, going into the gyms, the barber shops, in the schools. That's fantastic. That's the message. That's what we need to get out there. So thank you for being an example and leading that charge. We've got one more question in the back. Dr. Ashanti's going to hand off.
Yes, last question. Go ahead. All right, so thank you both for speaking on the panel. I appreciated one point one of you mentioned about redlining and how that is actually tied to lung cancer risk. But then we also talked about radon being the second most common cause of lung cancer. And I don't think I mentioned this earlier. So my name is Brianna. I'm a PhD candidate here at Morehouse School of Medicine, and I study lung cancer disparities. And so one thing that I've been really thinking about is how do we mitigate the harm done by the research that we're doing? Because one thing that I considered was radon in historically Black communities due to the redlining, that would impact the price of our homes if we want to sell eventually, right? And so that could prevent us from buying a $20 test, because what happens when you find that problem, right? Because then we have to fix that problem. Or like we don't want to live there, but then we have to sell our homes. So how do we try to mitigate that, or how do we address that problem without like it's something that has to be done because it's impacting our health. But then even though it has to be done, the government is not responsible for taking care of it, although they might have been responsible for creating the problem. So just like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, there's one thing it may be something where, excellent question, Brianna, and actually that's my daughter's name, so I love that already. And you've got, I'm not surprised that you're a PhD candidate because you've had amazing questions from the audience. Perhaps some of the policy work that needs to happen around that could follow in the footsteps of what was done around lead and lead paint. And at a certain point, the government did have to start, passing legislation. Landlords had to, do things in different apartment buildings, and things had to be revealed to new buyers and real estate. So it may be that has to be an additional step that comes in from a policy level. But you're right. How does that happen? Because it's not a coincidence. Although you don't have to be in a poor neighborhood for radon to be in the soil and all of those things, or to be in the foundation of a home. And it doesn't even have to be an older home. It could be a newer home. But in newer construction, they often have some of the monitors and things that can check early on, where the older ones aren't going to have them. But you raise an excellent question. I don't know, Dr. Manley, you brought up, I think, the redlining. Maybe you've got more on that.
Well, I didn't per se have a link with redlining and radon. It was just redlining and lung cancer risk, because you put people in high-risk communities with the crime and the pollution and the freeways.
The pollution,
and
absolutely.
and then if you think about even just you're in a violent neighborhood, then you have all the stress on top of the stuff, and so that combined to really
smoking rates may be up higher.
Then there's smoking. Then there's people that don't have history of smoking that get lung cancer. Then how do you measure those? And then you have the secondhand smoke, which we know is a risk factor, but I haven't read the research. I don't know to what degree. I know secondhand smoke is, of course, major risk factor, which is why they went through all the stuff in the 80s to get rid of stuff in airplanes and cars and vehicles. So. Did I even answer the question? I just
you did. But I think there is definitely more work to be had on that, and radon definitely does show up more in Black and brown communities. So the fact that it is the #2 cause of lung cancer, the fact that it is more prevalent in neighborhoods that are going to be poorer neighborhoods, that are going to be, possibly Black and brown neighborhoods, we're less likely to know of the danger of it. So we're less likely to also get the testing done for it. So you don't know what you don't know. If you haven't heard that there's a risk of radon in your home or in the foundation, you're also not even going to go get the $20 test to find out that you have it. And then if you've also heard the myth that it's going to be extremely expensive, or, now I know, so how am I going to sell my house? You may not want to know. So there's a lot right there. Brianna, you really touched on something big. So thank you for your question. And I just think there's more for us to know, more of us for us to find out. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank you, Carrie, for joining the panel, Dr. Manley for being on the panel. So if we could give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. There we go. I'm going to just say a few closing remarks also. I know we've been here for, I've got 2 mics actually going. Is this okay? Okay. So I know Dr. Ashanti laid out in the beginning of our discussion on how we were going to go on a historical journey. And I think that's exactly what we've done. Today, we've walked through a powerful story from the roots of tobacco in the community to the truths that science reveals to us today, to the human impact of lung cancer and the fight for equity in all communities. No Smoke, Just Facts isn't just the title of our event, it's a commitment. It's an opportunity. And the facts are clear. The history is undeniable, and the future depends on how we use this knowledge to act for healthier communities. Now, we have lunch available, but before that, we have Ms. Cheryl Donnelly, who is going to lead a great physical activity for us to get moving. But I want to just say thank you to everyone. I want to thank our sponsors for being here with us today. And please, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Cheryl Donnelly.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wasn't this wonderful? I learned so much. And now what we're going to do is we're going to connect all the information that we heard today, and we're going to connect it with some movement. So I like to call myself a movement motivator, right? So We're going to get our lunch, and then don't leave, because we're going to come back and we're going to get our boots on the ground, right?
Shady behind the scenes.